Notification of this meeting was provided to the Westfield Leader, advertised on December 28, 2017. Notification was sent to Star Ledger and promptly posted on the municipal public bulletin board and filed in the office of the municipal clerk, informing the public time and place according to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law, Chapter 231, PL 1975. Good evening, everyone, and welcome.
Good evening.
Mr. Renaud, do you have something for us this evening?
Yeah, you know what the main thing I would want to report on, Mayor, I did review, we had a discussion at our last meeting in December regarding the planning board suggestions with respect to ordinance number 17-29. So I did follow up on that, and I'll just tell you what I've concluded and what I've done with respect to those planning board comments. You may remember this is the Central Business District zone ordinance, which was unchanged other than that it provided for a mandatory set-aside for affordable housing in the event that a development was approved. So there were three suggestions. One of them was that applicants would try to avoid their contribution by subdividing lots. The ordinance, actually the affordable housing ordinance, as it was written, not this ordinance, but the affordable housing ordinance says that you can't do that. So we don't have to worry about that recommendation. And actually, the affordable housing ordinance is going to have to be amended in accordance with some requirements of the special master to even make that clearer. So there is already and will be a no subdivision requirement. The second suggestion was that there be a pro rata per unit share for cash contributions where there would be called for a proportional share of affordable housing, as for example, when fewer than the required number would be reached. So for example, if 15% was required and only 6 units were built, then that would not come up to a whole number that would require 1 unit. So I did check that also, and the affordable housing ordinance already had that provision in it for a payment for fractional units. However, I do want to tell you that that's another provision that the special master is recommending that we amend, because COA has not updated since I guess 1999 or thereabouts, the payment that is required, what they call the in lieu payment. So her recommendation is that we simply round up, and so in other words, anybody who had a requirement that was expressed in a fractional unit would simply be rounded up and would have to provide 1 affordable unit. Then the third suggestion was amending the bulk requirements for lot size, as it was noted that a 20 by 100 lot would be permitted. I had I can't say discussion, I emailed the board's planner, Vic Vinegra, and I suggested to him that I wasn't necessarily opposed to that, but that I would suggest that the planning board consider that, because many, if not most, of the lots in the CB zone are 20-foot wide lots. So making another requirement, let's say 40 feet or whatever the number was, would mean that virtually every one of the storefronts that are along, for example, Center Street, would then become non-conforming and would require variances every time they did anything. So again, that's more a planning consideration, but I don't know whether that was considered. So I sent those back. So I did want to report to you on what I had done with respect to those recommendations because we had discussed doing something with them. I think that's it, Mayor. If anybody has any questions.
Anyone?
Yeah, so, ask about resolution 18-37.
That's on tonight,
Yep,
18-37.
37, the first one.
Yes.
My question is, why now? What is this really discussing? Why is this something that we have to approve?
This is one of the requirements of the special master. Every town that has a protection against builders remedy lawsuits has to adopt such a resolution. This was a COA requirement originally. Now it's a court requirement. Just so you know, the only thing that it pertains to, and this is why it's not much of a concern, it's a requirement, so I can't tell you that it's not, that somebody doesn't think it's important, but I don't think it's of consequence in Garwood. What it has to do with is the rehab program. So we're required to have a program for the rehabilitation of substandard affordable units. We participate in the county home improvement program, which is a rehabilitation program that covers owner-occupied 1- and 2-family residences. There was the general purpose of this resolution globally is that if, for example, there was no program, you would have to have some means for rehabilitating affordable units. And in fact, most towns are required to have a rehabilitation program apart from the county program because it only covers owner-occupied 1- and 2-family residences. However, I was able to persuade the special master that since we did not have any previously designated affordable housing, that we weren't going to have to rehabilitate anything because nothing was even going to be built for 2 years probably. So, and my judgment is that by the time 2025 rolls around, we're still not going to need to rehabilitate any newly constructed affordable units. So while it's a theoretical commitment, I can't conceive of a circumstance under which Garwood would actually have to fund anything under this resolution.
Okay. I have one more question now.
Okay?
Moving on to 18-038. Give me the background on this resolution, where did it start, and how did we get here to where it's on tonight's agenda?
Okay. Where it came from was we had a request from the property owner, you may recall.
Who was it again?
This was, the name of the property owner is Quick Cop or something or other.
Okay.
We got a request from the property owner. The council discussed it. I can't tell you the date, but I want to say November or thereabouts. And it was discussed, and I was directed to prepare a resolution to approve of the request, which is what I did. So that's why it's on.
All right, this thing went back to the planning board, was discussed.
No, it hasn't gone to the planning board.
Hasn't.
It's all that this does is removes the single-family deed restriction. It has, if they're going to use it for anything other than a 1- or 2-family residence, then they would have to go to the planning board for a variance. This does not grant a variance or grant anything other than removing a single-family designation in what is a 2-family zone anyway.
It was a little earlier than November, so maybe it
Was
was
it?
September.
Okay. Time flies when you're having fun.
You right?
We all have a question.
I have to, I'm assuming do I have to abstain from that?
Based on the discussion that you had with me at the time, yes.
Okay.
So- Okay. Mr. Arnott, 2 items. To follow up about 18-038, that is something that was clarified to be in the council's purview and not the planning board's, because I know that had come up in the past.
Has to be, the council has to ask, I'm sorry, the council has to act first on this. yes.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, just to follow up about the first item you brought to our attention with the planning board recommendations. So does that mean this council can expect to see an amendment to that ordinance at some point in the future once the planning board or their planner hashes out the bulk requirement?
Yes, and I would
Okay.
say at the same time, well, I mean, assuming that they come up with a recommendation, but I have to go back to the planning board and back to you again with the affordable housing ordinance anyway, so we can work all those things out.
Great. Well, thanks for putting it on our radar at least. Appreciate that.
Mayor,
Yes.
semi-new to this. Mr. Renoy, going back to 1837,
Yes,
we'd just like to read this and maybe you can clarify myself on this. Whereas in the event that the above funding sources prove inadequate to complete the affordable housing programs included in Garwood's housing element, the Fair Share Plan, Garwood shall take all appropriate actions to secure and make available significant funding from sources and address any shortfalls. That's my question. Where does the shortfall come into your explanation to the question?
well, the shortfall would be in terms of the rehab. I mean, in terms of, we have had some other expenditures that may come up in connection with this, including, for example, the planner and so forth, and that they have to be paid for to proceed with the protection from builder remedy lawsuits. So theoretically, it covers that, but we were doing that before this resolution. Resolution's a requirement of, was a requirement of COLA, now it's a requirement of the special master.
So prior to your past statement, you said that we probably would not fall into this category anyway?
Now, we wouldn't fall into the category with respect to the rehab.
Okay, okay. All right, thanks for the clarification.
Anything else?
Rehab only. You would've told
Yes,
me.
I don't think we're gonna come into the category with respect to rehab. You've asked me that question several times, is how, do we have to pay for this? And the answer is yes. I've always said
Anything, right,
yes.
anything that we're reading with, shortfalls, that means we're responsible. I'm gonna pull it from the consent agenda anyway.
Okay.
Anyone
you.
else? Hearing none, we'll move on. Ms. Ariema?
Okay, so what I need to discuss is the RFPs that I'm working on for tax maps and reevaluation. So I was unable to find someone else who wrote an RFP for tax maps. So the RFP for reevaluation, it's not time for that yet. It's not time for you to hire a firm yet. You're not on that page yet. You have to do the tax maps first. So I did some inquiring, and some poking around, and I spoke to Mike Disco. Because I thought, maybe he did them for Mountainside. She did not, because he's not a surveyor. It has to be done by a surveyor. So when I talked to him, he said that if we asked him to do it, he would just hire a surveyor, and he'd probably most likely hire Guriello and Deck. So that would just add what you're gonna pay Guriello and Deck, who gave you a quote anyway. Mr. Guriello has been up, because he's been working on a Center Street job, and he's talked to me, and he said, I gave you that quote in July, and I'm almost finished with the work, so his price is very reasonable. I spoke to the CFO, and she said that we can fund it in the 2018 budget, and you don't have to really decide about, you can decide about doing that special note that you're going to have to do soon for the rebound, but in order to get this thing going, which I must implore we should, is my recommendation to fund it out of the 2018 budget It's $14,700. Hire Mr. Guriello and get these tax maps done. They have to go to Trenton and be approved, it's be a lengthy process, and you need to have that in place so the reval can be done. Sometime over the summer, I will prepare an RFP for reval and get you some proposals for fall, so you could figure out, you need to award that this year, because it's got to be done by the end of 2019, so you can't wait till 2019. But your critical piece is the tax maps, and we have two options. One is fund it, or do the special note. Either way, if you make me do an RFP, you can't award it, because you don't have the funding in place. So you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. It's kind of a waste of my time, which is, I must say, very, very, very tight right now. So I'm trying to build an office across the hall there, and that is consuming my time. So I have the quote, you got the quote in July. I can pass it around if you want to see it again. He's done them before. It's gonna, nobody's gonna give it to you cheaper because he's got all the groundwork laid. My recommendation is that I have a resolution deleted from the consent agenda prepared to award it to Mr. Guriello to fund it out of the 2018 budget. That's really your only question there is, do you want to fund it in the budget or do you want to do that special appropriation?
We don't have the cash for that?
I just said, I spoke to the CFO, we spoke to the auditors, and of course, we haven't started the budget yet for 2018. But speaking to those two people, they looked at our budget, they looked at where we are, they looked at what we've got, and they said that they think that should be no problem to fund that in the 2018 budget.
All right.
And that's what I would recommend that we do, so you can get this thing moving along, and take a piece of it out of that special note. People are paying for it anyway. It's just-
Well, I'm more apt to pay cash, you don't have any interest on it, and I think that's just a better way to go for that amount of money.
The council, there is a consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Move
Okay,
forward?
so I have a resolution, I'll read it later.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
great, thank you. And the only other thing I have is, I don't know if everybody can hear about the problems with the fire alarms. Not only do we have a problem with the fire alarm in this building, but we have a big problem with the fire alarm in the rec buildings. It's bigger than I can explain, but I am working on it. It's complicated, and I just want to let you know in case you hear anything, that I am on it to the best of my ability. And I will get you a quote for how much it's going to cost you to fix the problem. The problem is that the fire alarm is not, it's not hooked up to anything. It's not, when it goes off, it doesn't tell anybody. And that's a problem.
Isn't it, it's
Wow.
grounded, it's grounded, right?
I don't know a lot of technical details because it's not my, so totally not something I would know. But I just know what it's doing wrong, and I know who I gotta get in to tell me how much it's gonna cost me to get it right. It has to send a message to dispatch. I just haven't gotten a chance to sit down with a vendor and talk to him.
Can our fire department go over there and look at it?
Our fire department's been there many times with the fire
Right,
alarm.
I know.
And no, they cannot help at this point. This is something I have to take care of. I need to get a quote from a vendor to fix the problem. I just wanted you to know that I'm working on it in case you hear anything, know that
Yeah.
I'm going to have it resolved very quickly.
Just a high level for all intents and purposes, for everyone else here, what's happening is the fire alarm's going off every so many days, right? A couple times a week. At the rec center, there is a faulty fire alarm in that building, and now we have to repair that. Is that, and then you're trying to find the quote. Next meeting, I'm assuming, we're going to discuss it and do something.
I may even have it, like, I may just get it repairable. It's
Okay.
not a lot of money.
That's fine.
If it's like to repair this one, yeah, I'm gonna be seeing you. It's
Okay.
a lot of money, but I wanna try to get it resolved as fast as possible. And I just want you to know that I'm on it. It's just challenging, very challenging. But
Thank you, because I know some residents have been
Yep.
concerned, they see all the fire activity and aren't sure what it is, so
I
thank
think
you for
it
the
started
report.
when we started fixing making the repairs. So I don't know if
Mhm.
that has anything to do with it, they turned the heat up too high or triggered something, I'm not sure, but I just want you to know I'm on it and I'm going to get it taken care
Yeah,
of.
well, nothing should be triggering the alarms anyway, no matter what they're doing. over
Something
there.
that's so, you know,
I
I'm
know.
on it, it's just, there's a lot going on right now. Lot. That's
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Aaron?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Any unfinished business for the council? Any new business? I have 2 items. I am pleased to announce on behalf of Victoria Colonese, registered dietitian of the Garwood ShopRite, a free 6-week weight management series at our ShopRite. The class will begin November 15th through February 19th for 6 weeks from 6 to 7 p.m. Pre-registration is required. You can all call her at ShopRite to register. Please support this educational and helpful program. Victoria has been a major supporter of the Mayor's Wellness Campaign. As I announced at our 2018 reorganization meeting, with the assistance of Carol Carney, our council business liaison, I have been invited to various locations in Garwood for the mayor's meeting, which May Saturday will be held on January 20th at Punch Gym in the Garwood Mall on South Avenue, starting at 11 a.m. I have invited Council President Jen Blumenstock to join me. The schedule of upcoming dates will be posted at Borough Hall, Garwood's website, and all the local newspapers. I invite all to stop by to express their concerns or to chat while they check out the business in our great town. That's all I have to say. Moving on, comments and matters of discussion for members of council. Council President Blumenstock.
Thank you, Mayor. I mentioned at the reorg that I wanted to pursue hiring a property maintenance officer. We already passed the ordinance that allows us to do so, and so Mayor, if we could either discuss that next step here, or if you could direct it to the proper committee. I think it's imperative we just move the process along. I think it would be a real win for the residents.
When we just start the conversation here, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I think it's
Does
appropriate.
it need to go to committee?
Didn't we have it on laws and license last time?
It was on laws and license for the ordinance.
We'll go through the laws and license then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Monday is January 15th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. In honor of his memory, many surrounding towns have set up a day of service, organizing many opportunities for residents to give back. One such service day is being held in Fanwood and Scotch Plains. They already have several activities going on around town, including making sandwiches for the Plainfield Homeless Shelter. I've already signed up with my daughters, and I know Councilwoman Tedisco has as well. So I'd like to encourage everyone to consider doing something this week to give back to those in need. Whether it be signing up for Fanwood's Day of Service or another town service day, or just doing something on your own, please honor Martin Luther King Jr. and his legacy by helping others. He once said life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So this coming week, let's all ask ourselves that question and do our part to give back. And if anyone has any questions or would like any more information about the Day of Service, please feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Kukrow?
Yes, one thing. I'm sorry to say, the Administrative Review Committee, I'm going to have to resign from that. There's like no administrator on there. I didn't even realize it at the last meeting.
Okay.
So I don't see how you can have administrative review without an administrator.
Well, that was basically set up by myself, and we were just going to have a committee discuss various things that was brought to us. That it just happened that the administrator was on the committee prior.
Right, right. I thought it was good with the administrator, but if she's not going to be, then I don't know what the...
I'll take that under advisement. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Lazaro?
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Councilman McCormick?
Yes, Mayor. I think if I can, I'd like to step back a little bit because I'm kind of getting acquainted here. Is there a way I can pull 18043 from the agenda?
Councilman, we'll get to that part.
Okay.
Right before the mayor gets, that he's gonna ask you if you wanna remove any, and that's when you make that statement.
Thank you.
Anything else, sir? Councilman, anything else?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Mayor, if I could just jump in for a second.
Yes.
Councilwoman Blumenstock mentioned the property maintenance officer and hiring one. My recollection was, and forgive me if this is the wrong recollection, that we had an ordinance that we were contemplating, but the question was who was going to enforce it. And the ordinance was kind of laid on the side while we decided who was going to enforce the ordinance. So we need to adopt, introduce and adopt an ordinance if we're going to be having somebody doing the work. So we probably, soon we're going to want that to happen.
I'm sorry, yes, I had, everything's,
Yeah, I don't remember where it left off.
So I guess I didn't remember where it left off, so.
Actually, well,
We did establish.
We established the position, right,
Established the salary.
Okay.
which is fine.
That's
So we
what I
have a
thought, okay.
position, so now we
Well,
know
we
the
need
answer
to-
of who's going to do it.
Right.
So now we need the
Right,
ordinance.
and,
We have the ordinance.
and Mr.
Well,
Knott,
I
I
mean, we
did,
need to,
Put it in.
I
Okay.
I do recall where we left off because I spent hours drafting a new ordinance. That, of course, Mr. Knott needs to look at because he's the one with the law degree, not me. But anyway, I did compare the two codes to try to bring it up to speed as best I could. And so I sent that email some point last year. I want to say midway through the year. I can check back to my email. I'd be happy to forward it to you again. I'll forward it to the members of the Laws and License Committee. And sure, let's get this going.
right,
Yeah, I
if
thought
you
we had it
would.
all done.
Yeah,
I
it's-
did too, but I guess that,
it is done, but I know it was months ago, so I
Yeah,
have
we
no
have-
problem sending
yeah,
it.
Give
was
the
a lot.
final step now.
Yeah,
the next step,
I thought we finished.
whatever that may be.
Okay. Councilman Sarno?
The only thing I want to say is that I think tomorrow we have our site plan review of Russo 1. That's going to continue with the planning board meeting tomorrow night. I encourage everyone to attend. I mean, it's like part 2 of maybe 3 meetings, so there's a lot of information there. I think it's also the reorganization planning board.
That's correct.
Mayor?
Okay.
That's all I have.
You'll be bringing everything over to the council though, whatever was discussed.
Questions you have?
Okay.
Or Mayor Cardinal?
Councilwoman Tedesco?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm glad Councilman Sarno brought up Russo 1 site plan. I was wondering where we are with getting an independent traffic study for that site. Do we know where that's at right now?
Is it coming, Kathy? I mean, or-
Yeah, we
it's
have
all-
an independent.
Yeah, we have it. We
Yeah,
have
it's
it.
gonna be part of the testimony.
That's tomorrow, right?
Planning board.
Is he
That
coming in,
may be
or is it the
tomorrow.
24th?
That may be tomorrow, it depends
Yeah.
on the schedule.
Because it depends on how each expert goes, right?
Okay.
Because there's a specific
We
engineers
only
that are
had
coming in.
two. Right.
We only had enough time for 2, and we went past 10:30, and then
Good,
it'll go on there. So the study's done, it's just a matter of testifying, bringing it to public, and going over the data.
okay, perfect. Glad to hear that because obviously traffic, major concern of the public on that site plan and all that.
You know who's done
I do. It escaped me, but they have a reputable firm. I know that for a fact.
All right, so I really did my homework before this workshop, so be prepared. But in honor of Martin Luther King Day of Service, Council President Blumenstock and I teamed up. We brought back the soup and cracker drive. You might have noticed the boxes outside in the hall, which will be collected to benefit Garwood senior citizens. It was actually started a couple years ago by Bill Neerstedt when he was on the council, and we're happy to bring it back. And thank you for teaming up with me so we got it done in a short amount of time. That drive for the soup and crackers for senior citizens will run through Tuesday, January 16th. Also, on the volunteer card that was mentioned at our reorganization meeting, I want to thank the mayor for designating Council President Blumenstock and I as sort of the task force to make my campaign promise of a volunteer rewards program a reality. We've actually worked together to draft a letter to distribute to all the businesses in town, asking if they would be willing to offer a discount to support the program. In addition, we will be reaching out to businesses via a press release to the newspapers. We are aiming to get all businesses signed up by March so that we can have the card printed and then given out to the many volunteers that do so much to help our borough, hopefully as soon as April. While no volunteer, of course, does this, giving their time, their energy to any effort to reap a reward, and we know that, we do think this would be a nice way to say thank you to them for all they do. And also it does encourage people to shop locally here in Garwood because our business community is clearly very important to ensure our town stays vibrant. On the Union County front, I want to encourage my fellow council people to join me again this year in advocating for Garwood to Union County. The mayor, Council President Blumenstock, and I attended their reorganization meeting this past Sunday. The new freeholder chairman is Sergio Granados, and the new vice chairman is BJ Kowalski. In the chairman's address, the freeholder laid out a set of initiatives in the areas of the advocacy, equality, volunteerism, public safety, and the environment. In particular, 2 first-ever state offices were created. One is the LGBTQ office, and the other is the Office for People with Special Needs. The Level the Playing Field grant was also mentioned in his address, which was launched to begin this year, 2018, and is one that Garwood has already submitted an application for. And I do know it can be an inconvenience to attend freeholder meetings down in Elizabeth, or it might be tough to make those meetings because as council people we are very busy, and I realize that, but I do think it's very important that whenever we can, we make our effort to go to those meetings, and so we can hear the freeholders and what they have to say and what they're deciding firsthand, and we can also be present to advocate for the people of Garwood. And so with that said, I had passed out earlier a copy of the rotating schedule I've done the last 5 years, and I know this is a challenging effort, but I again hope we can all get behind that. Another item I have, last one, Hartman Park. So there's been some talk about the council asking the Board of Education for help with funding the Hartman Park renovation project, and I do want to get behind that. I wanted to put forth an idea of how we can do so. I would like to encourage the council to write a formal letter making a request of the Board of Education, which could perhaps be drafted by the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Since school children, in particular the kindergartners, use Hartman Park during the school day, it would certainly not be unreasonable for us to request this, while I do recognize, of course, the park is completely borough-owned and therefore ultimately our responsibility as a council. While respecting the different domains of the council and the school board, ultimately tax dollars are tax dollars, regardless of the entity using them. In particular, I would like to recommend that the letter suggest if the board is willing to help in any way with funding, that it do so as a percentage of the final cost of the project based on what it feels appropriate. Contributing to the project would probably make the most sense once the official number is established, and then it can be applied to the bond ordinance that was passed last year. The board may also want to agree to a certain amount not to exceed a certain number, which would also be reasonable. Since the next Board of Education meeting is January 16th, if the council agrees, perhaps we can direct Ms. Ariema tonight to just send a short note over to the Board of Education to let them know that a formal letter about Hartman Park will be coming soon for them. I know that there was some discussion at the last Board of Education meeting of 2017, and I just want to really keep them in the loop about this. So, just an idea. Thank you.
And then,
Yeah, no,
Yeah, just a short note, just to let them know that the council will be sending them a formal letter about the Hartman Park project soon.
and I'm happy, as Buildings and Grounds Chair, to write that letter and then send that to the rest of the council for your approval, if you guys are okay with sending that letter to the Board of Ed.
Well, I suggested it last time, so I'm on board with somebody else paying for a little bit.
Okay.
I think that's right.
That's fine.
So you just want me to tell them that you're making plans for it, right? You don't want their input, right?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, so maybe, maybe perhaps, we can, initially, maybe I can, set up some for a meeting, since I just got an email from, the company that we've been working with, because we had to postpone our meeting from last Friday because of the snow, because the field was snow covered. And so I just got an email that our next meeting will be Thursday of next week, that I'm about to email. I just got this a couple hours ago, so perhaps we can invite, the
Would you like me to
superintendent.
invite a member or members of the board?
Yeah, we can invite the superintendent and members of the Board of Ed, so that way they can kind of see what kind of equipment is going to be on that space, as well as maybe get their input, and
Okay.
then maybe
So
we
I'll
can see.
invite them to that meeting on your behalf.
Yeah, sure.
And that was Thursday next week, 3:30?
Yes, that's.
Because I thought I saw Friday.
It was changed.
Okay.
I proposed that Friday at
Okay.
3:30, but it's been.
You got it.
changed.
I'll let you know what they say.
Can I offer a contrarian opinion for this? And I know I voted against the park, but let me just take it from someone just stepping from the outside. Do you want another board? You've already made the decisions here. Do you want to mix this up with another board? Again, I think you're robbing Peter to pay Paul when you do these kind of things. But you've done a lot of the legwork yourself. Do you really want to meddle with another board? think about that. I mean, I'm not offering one way or another, you know how I made my feelings clear throughout the whole process, but just something to consider when you do something like that.
Are you talking in terms of finances or
Well,
input
if
into
you're gonna ask for
the
money,
plan?
then they're gonna wanna get involved in the planning parts. I just say tread carefully.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I think that, I appreciate the warning.
Yeah.
All I would say is that, you know, I think that, if,
Participating in it is different.
right.
That I get.
I see what you're saying, because obviously, if they're financially participating, there's gonna be more leverage, but at the same time, you know, I'm not, you know, I think that we're gonna go into this meeting with the recognition that ultimately, our committee and the council is going to ultimately decide with that input, if they're willing to, of course, contribute some money, great, you know, because their kindergartners do use that facility, and so they use Hartman Park. And so I wonder if there's potentially input that they do have, and if they are willing to, you know, if they have capital funds already available, that they could, you know, put towards this, so we don't, you know, we don't have to spend as much from our funds that we raise from the bond, then that would be an ideal thing.
I just want to make one point about the financing of this project. I think it's really important to keep in mind with that whole notion of like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like I said, tax dollars are tax dollars. Obviously, as you pay them, they go to the Board of Education to spend as they decide, or the council, or the county, of course, too. Can't forget about them. However, the Board of Education has a larger capital fund right now established, meaning they've already raised those Garwood tax dollars, whereas the council and through a bond ordinance would be raising those tax dollars in the future. So there is a slight difference there, and I think that point just needs to be made to benefit the public. As to part of the rationale when making this request, and like I said, ultimately, we realize it's a borough-owned park. If the school does use it, they do not, of course, have to put forth any funds, but perhaps they will choose to. Obviously, they need that option, and I just want to formalize that through the letter, so.
My recommendation again, talk to Mr. Larson about this. This is not something that happens often. I understand the merits of what you're saying, but just keep that in mind that you may want to reach out to the SBA.
Yeah, I never thought about the ramifications that I really just kind of wanted some of their money. You know, I wasn't thinking about anything else. I just was kind of hoping that they would fund some of it without anything else. That's all.
But I believe that at least the input would be a great position to be in with their, some type of guidance with type of equipment, even the different age factors and everything, but and you have to be very careful about the money.
Well, and also, I just want to say that we had spoken last year with the Buildings and Grounds Committee, had spoken about meeting with them to discuss some of the equipment and get their input, especially with some of the special ed teachers there for the ADA equipment. And so that was sort of, we were already going to be reaching out to them to do that, not so that, you know, they could dictate what we would get, but maybe they could have some ideas of, you know, that, for instance, the sensory tunnel, there's different things that you can put on. Maybe they prefer different senses than the other. So, you know, we had already planned on doing this, so I think this is just an addition to that.
So Mayor, may I ask a question? Put forth for a couple of months as we discussed Hartman Park, we've never heard anything about an input from the Board of Education, so I find it a little odd tonight that once we already said yes to doing Hartman Park, that we are now looking for more help, if there's a way to say that, from the Board of Education. So I'm wondering how that falls into effect of why we already said yes to something, and now we're asking for more help from the Board of Education, which in the end, as Sarah has said, it's all coming from the same tax dollar anyway. So that's my question. So hopefully somebody can answer that.
Sure, very good question, a very fair question. Essentially, the council last year simply passed the bond ordinance for the project appropriating the funds. That was never 100% what the final project cost would be, because we had one grant that we applied for, we received $55,000, and then we applied for that other one, the Level the Playing Field grant, where we didn't even get an answer back yet, but we will soon, I would imagine, in the next couple months from Union County. But this council still needs to decide on whether or not to award the project and what that project will exactly look like, what types of equipment. So it's not any oversight, it's just simply a matter of where we are in the process.
So is it still fair for me to question why we say yes and then we're looking for help for more yes? Is it still fair for me to ask that question?
I think it's fair to ask pretty much any question, it's just a matter of where we are in the process. So this council still has votes to take on Hartman Park, I guess is my point. It wasn't a done deal at the end of last year.
And I would also just argue that, you know, just because we're asking for input, doesn't mean that we're necessarily, you know, yearning for help per se. We're just getting some additional input, and if potentially this, you know, there's more stakeholders that, you know, have more, you know, sort of a inspiration behind the actual project, I think that perhaps, you know, that we'll get a better overall product. So, you know, ultimately, I don't necessarily think the money issue to me is, if they're willing to contribute, great. You know, but to me, it's more about just getting input from as many of the stakeholders that are actually going to be affected by the update of Hartman Park. You know, that's basically what we're talking about here.
What you're really asking is, how come we approved it before we expanded all avenues to try and see if we can get funding somewhere else? Is that pretty much what you're asking?
That's not what the councilman said. Basically,
No, I'm talking to Mr. McCormick. That's what you're, I don't understand that. Is that what you were asking, why it was approved, if we were going for something else?
Say that again?
Is that what you're asking? That basically, why would the council approve it? I mean, I was against that, but why would they approve it if we had another avenue to try and get more funds for it?
Part of your question is correct. What I'm asking is, or what I'm suggesting, is that yes, the council approved to go forward with Hartman Park, but we sit here tonight looking for more support to make sure that the decisions that we voted yes on are in agreement. That's what I'm saying. So as we sat here for the last couple of meetings and people have stood up in support of Hartman Park to build this new park, because the one we have now is adequated, I have yet to see somebody from the Board of Education stand up and support why we're doing the park. So that's why I'm raising this question. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure if I can speak to that, but in terms of financials, I think it's also like, if you look at grants, if another grant came along, we wouldn't not apply for it because we had already bonded and approved the bond already. We would do whatever we can to try and get that money. So I just see it as that.
I also think it's important to recognize that there is a time frame for this, for the money that we have to spend. So it's not like that we get a grant and we have an unlimited amount of time to actually spend that grant money on the park. Therefore, it puts us in a situation where we have to move in an efficient manner. And obviously, I'm willing to, you know, as you know, chair of the Building and Grounds Committee, to try to get as many people involved. Obviously, the reality is that everyone's very busy, and it's hard to obviously get everyone informed about everything and every aspect of the park. And I think that the idea of saying, you know, that why now are we involving more people? Well, because we're now in the actual finalizing of the plans. You know, we have a good rough estimate of what we think is going to be there, but the actual finalized details are things that we're working through in the committee and through the input of other people that might be affected. So I think the idea of inviting these people, it's not saying that we, you know, didn't include them or we have talked to them. We have heard from teachers saying that they do use Hartman Park, that it has been rusted, which is why I investigated in the first place. It's something that has needed to be done. And again, I just need to remind the council, of course, it hasn't been remediated in 30 years. So it's not just like this is something that has just suddenly sprung upon us. This is something that has been a problem in terms of the, you know, it's, you know, the equipment is old and rusted. So that's kind of why we're where we are at right now.
May I? I'll keep it short. But we never in the past meetings have invited or heard a voice from the Board of Education. So at this meeting, I'm finding it odd that we do this. With that, my point was said, I think it was well taken, and we can move on with the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Okay. Councilwoman?
I am
Okay,
finished,
thank
thank
you.
you, Mayor.
We'll move on to public comment. Anyone in the audience who wishes to address the mayor and council, please step to the microphone, state your full name and address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Do I have to use the microphone or?
Speak up.
Jim Matthew, 335 Basil Avenue. I just want to thank everybody for a spirited discussion tonight. It's pretty good. Mayor, what's the state of play with the athletic field house? Where do we stand with the work?
Council, do you have a report for this evening?
So we have a meeting and executive session to find out some things that they found that I haven't been privy to until we have this executive meeting. So we basically, there was a schedule that I spoke at the last council meeting that I was given as far as the rehabilitation of the building. But there is something that we're going to be given information at an executive session, so probably be able to give you potentially more information once I get that information.
Okay. And when do we have a projected opening date for the athletic field complex?
No, sorry.
No projected opening date.
Maybe after you talk to them.
Okay. Okay, and this question is for you, Mayor. What, if anything, are you personally doing to spearhead this? Because one other question I have is, how long has this been closed for? To the public?
Since last spring.
Spring, right, so coming up on 9-10 months, I would imagine. So, Mayor, I would imagine, I just finished asking my question. I would imagine that this is a priority for you. So what, if anything, are you doing to get this open?
I personally haven't done much, to be honest, but I think that our borough clerk and our chairman of the Buildings and Grounds Committee has pursued it. We've had executive sessions. That's all I can say at this point.
Okay, so it's just, I'm not sure I heard you say you're not
No,
doing it.
no, I have not got in the middle of it. I know that the borough clerk has been doing her job adequately, and the Buildings and Grounds chairman have. I think we've got to do that.
All right, well, just as a citizen and a taxpayer, if I could just encourage you, as a citizen too, as mayor, please get involved, because sometimes mayoral leadership, I think, really can cut through and really kind of surmount, with all due respect, I'm a former councilman myself, but in my experience, mayors sometimes can get things done that council people can't, and provide some of the leadership. It's going on a year now. I can't go to a function around town, a party, whatever, without people making a beeline saying, why is that thing still closed? People, I mean, the anger is palpable, and we're going on a year now. And now we have another problem with the alarm. Do we have any indication of a ballpark, estimate of what that might be, how much that might be?
To fix it?
Yeah. Again, I won't hold anybody to it.
I honestly don't have, because I don't have any experience in something like that,
Mhm.
but it's not as big a deal as the alarm system in this building.
Okay.
It's not nearly as big a deal. It just got to get somebody in there, wire it, then triggers the dispatch. And I'm not sure if I got to go to an electrician or fire people. The working alarm system is just not helping us.
Okay.
I got to get that fixed, and I'm very overwhelmed with everything.
Good, just to offer an observation, just we're hearing about executive session, new findings, we're hearing about this, we're hearing about no date for the opening. This is now starting to sound like a real mess. As a citizen, I would encourage you to get involved, Mayor, and to clarify what the information is going out to the people, and perhaps cut through and try to move this along. And thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one.
Oh, come on. You gotta be kidding.
You only got a break the last.
Yeah, I gave you a break last time.
That was my Christmas present. Go ahead.
Are you putting a bow on it?
Thanks, Bruce.
Till next year.
I like a Christmas present once a year.
Bruce Patterson, 325 Lowell Avenue. Yeah, Hartman Park. I'm really happy to hear that you're giving it a good discussion on Hartman Park, and Councilwoman Tedesco makes good sense about the finances. That the capital plans are already in place and they have money. And I'll tell you, they do have a lot of money. I don't know if I mentioned last time, but anyway, they had an audit, and yes, it's approximately $2 million they're sitting on. Some of it's dedicated money, but they do have a surplus, so, you know, it's not necessarily raising taxes at this point. So it would be good to interface with the Board of Ed, if anything, maybe just to get their blessing. You know, just give them the plan, say, does this look good or not, and just have them give a blessing.
I think we're gonna take that first step now, by this letter initiating that process.
Sure, okay. And, you know, an example, I guess, you know, if you're having a 3 to 5 year old section, you know, like I said, yeah, maybe the way the guys are looking at it, your designers, maybe it's further back into the park where the Board of Ed said, you know, well, it really should be close to the gate. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, the final blessing would be good. You know, you're worried about the term input, but it really probably should be just a blessing. Again, with Hartman Park, you know, the accountability isn't really there as to what the heck happened to that park the last so many years. Councilwoman Kukrow mentioned, you know, that maybe some investigation should happen. I tend to agree that something should be looked into to find out whatever the process was that the ball was dropped. Whether there's normally a yearly assessment or just a drive-by look-see by the DPW, not to blame anybody at this point, but something really should be done. I mean, I remember Councilman Lazaro said, yeah, well, moving forward, we can put something in place. Well, whatever you put in place, maybe it was the same thing that was in place. So that's just it. You gotta really find out what history is to at least learn to move forward with. So, you know, that's very important. History is very important.
Yes, it is.
Oh, God.
Actually, the new person on the committee. During the reorg, the mayor in his speech talked about sustainable, it was something about, yes, sustainable New Jersey. That was actually brought up, I guess, early in the year also, but I just wonder if you could explain what that actually means, and is there really a cost to the taxpayers?
Well, first of all, there's no cost to taxpayers that we've seen so far. And I would just say on my behalf that it is broken down into two major components, Green Team and the Mayor's Wellness Campaign. Mayor's Wellness Campaign had green programs at our local shop, like Victoria with dietitian. Also, too, we had 2 months of walking with the mayor on Mayor's Saturday, which we were doing in the springtime.
It isn't at any cost to the borough. What this is basically a certification. It's an honor of sorts. It's something that we're just striving for. It's another way to say to people, to residents, that, you know, our town really is great because we are sustainable. So yes, there is possibility of getting grants in the future, and I know that was of some discussion. What we're focused on is just fulfilling the different activities and guidelines needed just to get certified, just like many of the surrounding towns are, so that we can sort of put our name up there too. It's nothing that will cost anybody anything at this point, so nothing to be worried about there.
When you mention guidelines of certification, you know, obviously there's nutrition and wellness.
Right.
And then there's the green team aspect.
Well,
I mean, is there
the
any
green
more?
team, the mayor's wellness is part of the green
Small
team.
section.
There's different sections such as the outreach, education and outreach. There's different
Can I have a
categories.
suggestion? I would suggest going to the website.
Yeah.
It becomes overwhelming after a point, but it's very, very informative. Sustainable New Jersey.
SustainableJersey.com.
There's a ton of stuff on there.
Okay.
You gonna wrap it up, sir?
Yeah, the rec complex that came up about the fire alarm going off. You know, I'm in construction, and the federal government guidelines when it comes to the military construction I'm involved in, they always say you have to take plastic and cover all the sensors, the fire alarm sensors. So it couldn't be that easy. Just a matter, you know, I guess they're cutting the floor to replace it. Maybe the dust someone in the sensor?
I'd like to live my life without guessing. I will find out what is wrong with the fire alarms for their.
Yeah, it could just be dust.
I don't think it's really all that complicated. I'm gonna take care of it.
I cross my fingers, all I have to do is get some pressure in.
I'm sure that by the time the next time I see you, it will be resolved.
Thank you. All right, and the independent traffic study of Russo One, this always brings dismay. I mean, you know, they're gonna do an independent traffic study of Russo One, but what about Russo Two? Shouldn't they kind of extrapolate as to what Russo Two is gonna be impacting on the traffic of Russo One? I mean, you know, you do piece and piece and piece, and you get away with a lot of impacts that should be addressed. That's something that you really should put in place. Extrapolate as best as possible Russo 2 traffic into Russo 1, just to see what we're looking at.
Is that it, Mr. Patterson?
Well, and thanks to Councilwoman Tedesco for the rotating attendance by the council for the freeholder meetings, although in the last 5 years, I mean, I probably can count on my fingers how many council people showed up, but, you know, advocating to the county, you know, advocating Garwood to the county is very important, of course. They're sitting on a lot of money too, I'm sure, as you heard me say a couple of times, and, you know, we could use some of that money, and I'm sure all the other towns could also, so. Just keep advocating, gang, you know. I'm down there, I thank them.
Thank you.
I thank them for the 55 grand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? A motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Shall we continue on? Okay, this evening I'd like to offer a moment of silence to Mr. John Conlon. Mr. Conlon was a 30-year member of the school board, and we offer a moment of silence for him tonight.
Pledge allegiance to the
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice of this meeting was provided to the Westfield Leader, advertised on December 28, 2017. Notification was sent to Star Ledger and promptly posted in the municipal bulletin board and filed in the office of the municipal clerk, informing the public the time and place according to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law, Chapter 231, PL 1975. Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Council meeting January 9th, 2018. Mayor Lombardo?
Here.
Councilman Kukrow?
Here.
Councilman Lazaro?
Here.
Councilman McCormick?
Here.
Councilman Sarno?
Here.
Councilwoman Tedesco?
Here.
And Council President Blumenstock?
Here.
Ms. Ariano, minutes, please.
Regular and workshop minutes of the mayor and council held on December 26, 2017, and reorganization meeting minutes of the mayor and council held on January 2nd, 2018.
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Ariano, communications,
New Jersey State League of Municipalities, Mayor's Advisory,
receiving file.
Union County Board of Children's Freeholders Ordinance,
Receiving file. We have no ordinances before us tonight. Council standing committee reports and other reports. Police, Councilwoman Tedesco.
Thank you, Mayor. Today is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, and I wanted to start by saying thank you to everyone here at our Garwood Police Department for the service they provide to our residents day in and day out. In preparation for tonight's meeting, I met with Chief Wright today. The PD will be getting 4 interns from Kane University to help with records management. Each intern will spend 120 hours over this spring semester, and this is free of charge to the borough. With that said, the project authorized by the council to revamp the record storage and armory, really the all-purpose room of headquarters, is well underway in our police department. Soon there will be a file system in place that is equal to 40 regular file cabinets, where before only 8 were able to fit. Due to this effort, the police will no longer need to pay for off-site storage and will be able to fit its records and evidence much more comfortably right here at headquarters. I look forward to sitting down with Chief Wright and the rest of the police committee to discuss ideas for exciting new initiatives for our police department and community at large this year. That's all for my report.
Thank you. Public Health, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I have no report. The first meeting is the 17th of this month, and I'd like to address the mayor and council on behalf that I would also like to invite Councilwoman Kukuru to accompany me to these meetings, if that's okay with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Streets and Roads Ecology, Council President Blumenstock.
Thank you, Mayor. In addition to regular garbage pickup, some of the DPW's recent activities include delivering sand to the sports complex for the Celebrations Luminary Sale and providing assistance to administration for zoning office cleanup. They also installed new plow edges on the larger snow removal equipment. And speaking of snow, Public Works employees worked a total of 33.5 man-hours of overtime on December 15th and 23 man-hours of overtime on December 30th, de-icing streets and sidewalks, both before and after the event, and removing snow on all borough-owned sidewalks. Public Works employees also worked a total of 36 hours of regular time and 68 hours of overtime for snow removal during and after the snowstorm on January 4th to January 5th. They plowed and de-iced all borough streets, parking lots, and borough-owned sidewalks during and after the storm, and de-iced all borough school crossings before and after the storm at various times. They traveled to the Union County Public Works facility and loaded the truck with salt before and after the storm as needed. In other news from Streets and Roads, we had a committee meeting last Thursday together with our superintendent to discuss the state of our snowplows. We currently have a 1992 truck with plow, a 1996 truck with plow and salt spreader, and a 2014 truck with a plow and a salt spreader. All are used in a snow event. However, as I mentioned at the December 26th meeting, the 1996 was out of commission. The drive shaft mount did rot off, and unfortunately when it did so, it caused the two-piece drive shaft assembly to break in half, and it bounced around doing some damage to the brake chamber, hydraulic lines, and the exhaust system, among other things. So the cost to repair the damage would be approximately $4,800. The committee unanimously came to the agreement that with the value of the truck being so little and with further extensively rotting hardware on the truck, that we should not do the repairs, but take this truck out of commission. The discussion then became about taking the salt spreader from the 96 truck and putting it on the 92 to use as a current backup for the 2014 truck. Though the 92 is older, it has not been exposed to the salt, and its condition is such that at this point it's feasible to use it as a backup for this current season. The cost of retrofitting the salt spreader would be approximately $6,000. Councilman McCormick was very much in favor of this, and though Councilman Lazaro and I were hesitant to go ahead with this, we were willing to compromise with Councilman McCormick because we value finding consensus as a committee whenever possible. So lastly, the committee discussed the necessity of purchasing another snow vehicle now that the 96 is no longer viable. This is actually something that has been on the capital plan for years. All three of us agreed to support the purchase of a slightly smaller Mason truck to make it more versatile and one that could be used throughout the year, not just during snow events. And it would also be less expensive than the size trucks we currently have. We are currently gathering estimates for this vehicle, and we'll bring this to the council for discussion once we have all of the information together. So that's all for my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Fire, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I have no report. The first Wednesday of the month is the fire meeting. At that same time, we had a Board of Education meeting, and since I was on both and didn't know about the fire, I happened to miss that meeting. But with that said, through the transition of a new fire chief and a new chair through the fire department, I think we have just crossed tides and we have no meetings, so we will be on board at the next meeting, so thank you.
Thank you. Finance, Councilman Sarno.
No report this time.
Thank you. Buildings and Grounds, Councilman Lazaro.
No report.
Laws and License, Councilman Kukrow.
No report, Mayor.
Recreation, Councilman Lazaro.
No report right now.
Garwood Senior Citizens Liaison, Council President Blumenstock.
No report, Mayor. Our meeting was canceled due to snow.
Library Mayor Representative, Councilman Lazaro.
Yeah, always have my library report.
I'm sorry.
Love my library report. All right. Sorry. So during the holiday season, the library collected over 85 pounds of food and non-perishables for the St. Michael's Food Pantry in Cranford. They helped the PTA collect items for Winterfest. And they will continue to collect food and other items for animals at the Plainfield Humane Society through the end of January.
upcoming January activities. In January, the library will continue its ongoing programs, including the knitting club every Monday and Thursday at 10:30, book clubs Monday afternoon and Thursday evenings, Design It Tuesday at 3 p.m., story time every Wednesday at 10:30, math science Wednesdays at 3 p.m., movie time every Friday at 10 a.m., adult craft January 16th at 6 p.m., kids craft Wednesday, January 18th at 3 p.m., and Lego Club January 11th and 25th at 3 p.m. In addition, on Monday, January 8th, the library held an information session on the retired and senior volunteer program. And just from upcoming library closing information, the library will be closed on January 15th in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. That's all for my report.
Thank you. School Board Liaison, Councilman McCormick.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On January 3rd, the organization meeting of the Garwood Board of Education took place. 8 out of the 9 board members were present for the meeting. Board members Christina Guerrero and Susan Groening were nominated for the position of president. After 2 rounds of voting both candidates, they received favor of 4 votes. Holding that position, Mr. Gebhardt, the board attorney, advised the board since one candidate did not receive the majority of votes, the matter would be referred to Mr. Juan Torres, the Union County Superintendent, for the decision of this matter. Mr. Larson, the business administrator, continued as chair pro tempore of the meeting. Mrs. Amanda Livingston was elected the vice president. On other matters, the board approved the calendar of meetings, designating the Westfield Leader as the official newspaper, with other papers approving for legal notices designated investor savings at the depository, and adopted the current policy manual and agreements currently in effect. The board approved, hold me to this name, Sakari and Holdback as the board attorney, Subley and Coney as the company of the board accountants, and Solution Architects as the architect of record. The next meeting will be held on January 16th at the Lincoln School. Thank you, and that's all for my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Celebration of public events and holidays, Liaison, Councilwoman Cooper.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Union County Air Traffic Noise Advisory Board Representative, Councilman McCormick.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Administrative Review Committee, Councilwoman Tedesco.
No report, Mayor.
I want to interject that that's a mistake on the agenda, it should say Special Review Committee.
Thank you.
We no longer have an Administrative Review Committee, and I'll get that corrected.
Historical Committee, Councilwoman Tedesco.
Thank you, Mayor. The Historical Committee had its first meeting of the new year last night. The committee looks forward to continuing its efforts to record and archive Garwood's history, to educate the public, and to celebrate our borough's relatively short but very rich history. The first historical newsletter has been drafted and now just needs to be edited so that it can be sent into the new Garwood Times to be an insert in the March edition. Additionally, the committee looks forward to continuing the Garwood Lives, Garwood Legacy in Video series, which will serve as an oral history from longtime Garwood residents. We are hoping citizens and local businesses will continue to support this self-sustaining committee in our fundraisers this year. I also just wanted to say that I'm very happy and very proud to be back as a liaison to this committee, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Parking Committee, Councilman Sarno.
No report.
We have no other officers' reports. Public comment. Anyone in the audience who wishes to address the mayor and council, please step to the microphone and state your full name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Joe Gold, 25 2nd Avenue, Garwood. Regarding the replacement of our truck, the 96 that's out of commission.
That's correct, sir.
I am retired for the 2nd time. I work with a local automobile dealership in Union County, closely with the person who sells trucks to municipalities. We deal a lot with Ocean County, and if the council is interested, I can put them in contact with somebody, or give me a name, and I can have this person contact them.
We have to go out for bid for a truck.
Pardon?
We have to go out for bid for a truck.
But I'm saying I can,
We have to publicly bid it.
Ms. Ariema, what about a co-op? Sometimes we can do that
If
too,
they're in a
right?
co-op, we can buy it from them.
all right,
Do you know if they're in a co-op?
I'll check.
Or a state contract?
I'll find out, and.
I'll find out when we come time to buy it. We have to buy it a certain way, we have to bid it or buy it from
All right, well, they do bidding, I know that.
What's the name of the company?
Maple Crest up in Union. Maple Crest Ford Lincoln on Vauxhall, out on Springfield Avenue in Vauxhall.
It's not familiar, but it doesn't mean that they're not in it, just we never bought from them.
Yeah, and, because I know that we do a lot of dealings
Say the name
with
of it again, I'll look it up.
Maple Crest, MAPLECRVST.
Okay.
You want to contact
No,
individual?
no, what will happen is if we go out for bid, you'll hear us
Yeah.
preparing the paperwork,
Right,
then we publicly put a notice in, then you can tell them that the notice.
all right, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Noel.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Good evening, again, Bruce Patterson, 335 Willow Avenue. I forgot to say, welcome aboard, Councilman McCormick. Talking about vehicles and rotting out, I would assume everybody's aware that, you know, you can undercoat vehicles and maintain a type of undercoat. So, I mean, that's something that maybe Streets and Roads Committee should at least keep in their mind, that possibly undercoating can be done. I don't know about after the fact, but, you know, that could be something to preserve the underside of these vehicles without salt and rot. The Union County government, yeah, just the Union County government, again, was given, and I mentioned this last year, they were giving out 4%, 5%, and 6% raises because they got plenty of money and obviously nothing to do with it, you know, no special thing to do with it. So they just add everybody's salaries and pensions, which is really sad. And again, I asked Chair Bergen, this is not the past meeting, but the meeting before, you know, exactly what do they do to get 4%, 5%, and 6% raises? Because obviously there must be some kind of meritorious action. He doesn't answer. I mean, it's just sad. You know, they'd rather just spend the money on their own buddies instead of actually caring for us. You know, we advocate. I know Councilwoman Sharon Tedesco always down there, you know, talking to the freeholders, but, you know, do they care? That's a decision we all have to make. But the snow days, I was talking to the chief, and he says, yeah, you know, whenever the snow is 3 inches, there's always the same cars parked on the street that they give tickets to. That's sad, because you know, I don't know these people, but it seems like they're probably in a plight that maybe they don't know their neighbors, or maybe they work during the night and they sleep during the day, so they never get to meet the people. But I mean, so they get these tickets, and you know, and I'm not speaking for them, but I'm sure they feel frustrated. I mean, if you can form some kind of ombudsman from the council to maybe talk to these people and tell them, yes, we can, you know, you do park here, you can park here. Maybe introduce them to the neighbor. You know, it's just sad that he said the same people get these tickets for parking in the snow when it's 3 inches and taller. It's sad. Something needs to really be done for these poor people. Oh, and last thing. I mean, we're now 3-3, by the way, in political parties, Democrats and Republicans. And yes, there's some kind of contention that goes on, and Angelo Almonte mentioned about, you know, everybody has to compromise and stuff. But here's a suggestion, and it may be a little frivolous or humorous, but, you know, there's 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. Oddly enough, there's 3 women and 3 men, and it all comes together.
Be careful, Mr. Patterson.
Yeah, I know, tread lightly.
I'm on this side of the road, so be careful.
Well, I'm leaving you out of the suggestion, by the way, since there's only 1 mayor. But anyway, possibly 1 Democrat and 1 Republican can get together, maybe over Dunkin' Donuts, and just sit down and discuss the differences and directions they feel. And it could be a female Democrat and a male Republican. And you know, if you look at it, I mean, how it states, by the way, it fits out pretty good. It could be a man and woman of each party.
Was that your last point?
Yeah, that actually is. And so it's something, you know, some kind of like something to make everybody feel happy and work towards a good direction.
Don't we reach out on the council enough? No?
Yeah, we'll put you with,
Yeah.
Thank you,
well,
Mr.
whatever.
Patterson.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a suggestion.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to unfinished business.
Actually, Mayor, if I could just remark about, to Mr.
Yeah.
Patterson about the trucks. And you're right, there is a certain amount of maintenance that can be done, but it has been done. And the trucks are washed after they come in from the salt. It's just that this is, the older trucks, like the 96, have a shelf life of about 10 years, and we're going on 21. Some of the newer trucks can last a little longer when they're maintained, maybe 15 years, and you can kind of squeeze a little bit more out of them if you can. But it's just that with this truck, it just, the value of the truck itself is so little that putting more money into fixing it is just, it outweighs the benefit. And, you know, something else would fall apart soon and things like that. You just keep putting more money into it. After a certain amount of time, something like that, especially that's been exposed to all the salt, just, it needs to be replaced.
May I ask you something, Councilwoman? What was the difference? I know you said you made a compromise in the committee. What was the difference in the large truck and the smaller truck?
In terms of price? The smaller truck, and these are just estimates, we're still working on going from what I was given. The smaller truck will probably come in around 70 to 75. That's with everything with the plow and the spreader. The larger trucks, we are looking at 140. So it does make a difference.
That's a big difference.
And so our superintendent, along with his foreman, did discuss, knowing that, you know, we do try to be cost efficient here, what they could get away with, so to speak, on the streets during a snow event, and also having a truck that could also be used more during the year. So they came to an agreement, and we took the recommendation, and we supported.
I like that there was a compromise, and for less money makes me very, very happy. So it's something that I would be supporting. So thank you very much for getting the consensus among the three.
Councilman Cooper, I think between the three of us, we had a lengthy discussion with Clinton. I think we came up with the best decision for the borough of Garwood. And I myself, I'm very pleased with the decision we made, so I'm happy with that. To speak to Mr. Patterson on the same people or maybe new people, most likely they're tenants getting tickets for not removing their car. You're asking for maybe the council or mayor to put out an extra letter or go to an extra hand and maybe help those people. Is that not in the packet to the resident, the homeowner, or the building owner to give that to their tenants, that they should know that, and not something we should have to reach out and do extra work for? Mayor, council, I don't know.
I think it's probably driveways too.
Nixle too. I encourage everyone to sign up for Nixle, because they do tell you when there's 3 inches of snow on the ground to do that. And yeah, this does get disseminated, correct.
It's on the marquee for the.
Another place it was the Office of Emergency Management and Police Department have social media pages, and they were putting it out that way. And they were even, one of the 2 pages, I can't remember which, put out there that for now, of course it's temporary, but residents that don't have driveways have been able to park at the South Petro lot. And so that was advertised on social media with this most recent snow event. So I want to just thank both entities for reaching out to the public. That's very good. And I too want to echo what Councilwoman Kukuro said. I'm very happy to hear that out of the Streets and Roads Committee, because as I said it in my reorg speech, I'm really happy that this council is prioritizing DPW equipment and seeing that the 1996 was just not worth dumping more good money after basically bad truck, too old and too costly to repair, that they're going for an alternative to replace it. That's fantastic. So thank you.
A lot less money.
Yes.
Okay, so we can move on now? Okay.
Mayor, before you
Yes.
go on to consent agenda, I just want to draw to your attention resolution 18040. That's supposed to say 2017 DOT, not 2018. 2017 DOT, Donald started, but Donald isn't interested in carrying on anymore, so
Okay.
it's being turned over to Mike Disco. So you already passed this resolution with Donald's name on it, now you're passing it with mine.
Okay.
Mike's gonna pick it up and finish his
Okay,
job.
very good, thank you, Sarah. Okay, move on, unfinished business, consent agenda. I understand there's council people, like, what is the number, Councilwoman?
I'd like to poll 037,
037,
038,
038,
043.
043. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm covered on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, very good. I do have a motion to accept the amended consent agenda.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second?
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman McCormick.
Yes.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
Councilman Tedisco. Council President Blumenstock.
Aye.
Okay, then we'll take each one individually. Do I have a motion to accept 18-037?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion?
I'm just, like I said, I don't really trust anything that shows shortfalls that are picked up by the taxpayer. It's just that simple.
All right. Anyone else?
I have a no on that for that same comment, that it comes back to the taxpayer. I'm gonna go with my no.
Okay, very good.
I'm in support of this because this is keeping us in compliance with the affordable housing, which could potentially cost great amounts of money in litigation. And I think that's why I'm supporting it.
Okay, roll call, Ms. Ariano.
This was just 037, correct?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, Councilman Kukrow.
No.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman McCormick.
No.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
Councilwoman Tedisco.
Aye.
And Council President Blumenstock.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to 18-038, do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion?
I have no discussion on it. I'm gonna be, yeah, okay. No discussion.
No discussion? Okay. Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilman Kukrow.
Abstain.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman McCormick.
Abstain.
Councilman Sarno.
Abstain.
Councilwoman Tedisco.
Aye.
And Council President Blumenstock.
Aye.
That's 3 in favor, 3 abstentions. That's a resolution, so that motion carries.
Abstentions, they carry as no votes?
Correct. No, they carry as nothing.
Has nothing.
Okay.
Okay. Move on to
They
18-043.
carry, well, they carry, in this case, they carry as I'm going to say that yours would count as no vote, the others, I don't know, I guess I could get into this. The general rule is that abstentions are deemed to have voted with the majority unless there is an expression of dissent or a disqualification for some reason. I know I've discussed this with Councilwoman Kukrow, and she indicated that she had a reason for the abstention. So I would count hers as a negative. This is sort of the same issue that we had on New Year's Day with respect to the other abstentions. Each one of them is going to be a different situation depending upon who votes, who abstains, and I'm sure that we'll have, I shouldn't say I'm sure, I suspect that we may
I
have a
hope not.
number of these as we go
Yeah.
forward.
Okay, 18-043, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion?
No discussion, Mayor.
Support the Harvard consultant
Yes.
who is doing this, who's the best planner for the job. This is a big, major project. Great principals over there working in neighboring towns. This is the best move for the borough going forward.
And for the benefit of the public too, we did speak about this at the December 26th council meeting and voted, but I called Ms. Ariema to find out that we just needed to actually solidify it via this resolution compared to that vote that took place on the 26th, so I'll still be supporting it.
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilman Kukrow.
No.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman McCormick.
No.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
Councilwoman Tedisco.
Aye.
And Council President Blumenstock.
Aye.
Resolution passed.
Thank you. Ms. Ariano, do you have any resolutions related from the consent agenda this evening?
I have one right now, yes.
Okay.
Let me make a copy of that.
Okay.
Resolution 18046, whereas the mayor and council of the Borough of Garwood determined that there exists a need for professional engineering services for the purpose of preparing revisions to the tax maps in conjunction with the re-evaluation order dated 5/2/2017, and whereas the Borough Clerk has determined that such services to perform the preparation of tax mapping are professional services as defined in local public contract law of the state of New Jersey, and whereas the local public contract law requires that a notice stating the nature, duration, services, and amount of each contract awarded as professional services contract be printed once in the official newspaper of the municipality. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the Borough of Garwood that the mayor and borough clerk be on and hereby authorized and directed to execute an agreement with Guriel and Beck Associates for the provision of professional engineering services in conjunction with the preparation of tax mapping. That said contractor shall receive fees not to exceed $14,700 in accordance with the proposal dated July 12, 2017. That this contract is awarded without competitive bidding as professional services pursuant to the local public contract law. That the borough clerk be and is hereby authorized and directed to maintain this resolution and the professional services contract on file and available for public inspection in the office of the borough clerk. And that the borough clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish a copy of this notice as required by law.
Do I have a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman McCormick.
Aye.
Councilman Sorno.
Aye.
Councilwoman Tedisco.
Aye.
And Council President Blumenthal.
Aye.
Thank you. There's no new business before the council. Ms. Ariano, name the claims.
Be resolved that the following claims as approved being stated by those paid and properly signed and verified. And the payment of payrolls as listed is hereby confirmed and ratified.
Do I have a motion to accept payment of claims?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilwoman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman McCormick.
Yes.
Councilman Sorno.
Aye.
Councilwoman Tedisco.
Aye.
And Council President Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Ariano, would you please read the resolution for the executive session?
Yes, Mayor. Sorry. Okay. Closed session resolution authorizing the executive session for the purpose of discussing potential litigation concerning the borrowed sports and recreation contracts and matters of attorney-client privilege relating to and above and in accordance with NJSA 12:4, closed session meetings open to the public, exclusion of public subject matter, whereas necessary for mayor and council of Borough of Garwood to conduct an executive session closed to the public in order to discuss the above matters. Now therefore be resolved that the council of Borough of Garwood hereby move to go into executive session according to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act for the purpose of discussing the subject stated above, and be further resolved that the matters discussed in and in such closed session shall be disclosed to the public when the reasonable confidentiality no longer exists, and action may be taken after we come out of the executive session.
Do I have a motion for the executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilwoman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman McCormick.
Yes.
Councilman Sorno.
Aye.
Councilman Tedisco.
Aye.
And Council President Blumenthal.
Aye.